Hi, how's it going? This is Reza of Collarwood for YouTube, Resident _of_Collarwood for BitChute. I'm here to continue my revisit tour of John Philip Betancourt's continuing blog series, The Return of Dark Shadows. Series 3, Chapter 8, A Family Seance. Night came quickly and consumed the entire Collinwood estate, leaving lights from one of the downstairs rooms to pour out of the windows, but that light-filled room was empty. The real action was happening in an upstairs bedroom that belonged to Alexandra Thorne. Alex and Claudia stood in the bedroom together, staring at the mirror. Both their mothers were trapped in under the spell Alex cast. The spell meant for Claudia, but by mistake, Alex's own mother, Carolyn, was pulling by Angelique's book of spells that trapped her behind the glass. Alex's use of black magic and her inability to fully grasp its treachery was to blame, and Claudia would not let her forget it. "You could change this, can't you?" Alex pleaded with Claudia, knowing full well the extent of her powers, since she possessed Alex's body and posed as her for weeks. "I don't think you get it, Alexandra. Half of my abilities have been depleted after I left your body. I can't undo anything anymore, especially not in this capacity. Angelique's book is much too powerful," Claudia explained as she inspected the mirror Carolyn was trapped in. The mirror, a large ornate 18th century piece, was hanging on Alexandra's wall. It had angels on each of its four corners, all four angels trumpeting long skinny trumpets that added to its golden frame's elegance. The frame was crowned by a sun made with crystals and etched with the initials J.C. for Josette Collins, Barnabas's first wife that leapt to her death off Widow's Hill. The glass inside the frame looked normal, just like any other, but behind it was a portal to the underworld where all the souls damned there for eternity could only look out on the world of the living in vain. "We have to do something. We have to get my mother out of there," Alex said, now looking at the mirror with Claudia. Alexander went over to the book that had fallen to the floor and knelt down to open it, hoping to find another spell to reverse what she had done and pull Carolyn out of the mirror and save her from the land of the dead. The book that had earlier felt as if it were welded shut now was opened without struggle, but just as Alex pulled back the cover, it was forced shut by someone standing over her. Barnabas had walked in with the bottom of his cane and pushed the cover closed and held it down tight. "I believe you've done enough damage with this, haven't you, Alexandra?" Barnabas said, reaching down and picking up the book. "Barnabas, you have to help me. I made a mistake. I listened to Claudia's mother and I tried," Alex said, jumping up to her feet. "Claudia's mother? How do you know Claudia's mother?" Barnabas said, interrupting Alex. "She was here, Barnabas. She convinced Alexander to use her book, and this is the result. Claudia is gone." Claudia coldly explained. "Gone where? Did Angelique take her?" Barnabas asked. "Into the mirror," Alexandra confirmed as she pointed to Josette's mirror on the wall. Barnabas looked over at Claudia, who stood next to the mirror, and waited for her to further explain. But Claudia only had a plan of action in mind. "Time is of the essence. If we don't figure out how to get Carolyn back from the other side, she'll be there forever, Barnabas. We have to use Angelique's book. Something in there will help us. What's left of my powers alone won't do," Alex Claudia explained. No, that book will only work counter to our motives. Angelique has always been that way, twisted and devious. We'll have to find Carolyn a different way, Barnabas said, turning to the mirror and running his fingertips over its gilded frame, allowing small memory flashes of his sweet Josette to cloud his mind for a split second. How? Alex said with tears in her eyes. Before the witching hour strikes, we'll have to summon Carolyn. A seance, perhaps. Her life is at stake, and if we can reach her through an open portal, she can come through and hopefully find her way back to us, Barnabas explained. Hopefully, Alex said in a worried voice. What you've done here, Alexander, has no guarantee of repair. You've opened the door to the other side, and it's not been shut closed. The only way we can get your mother back is if we try, if we try to reopen that portal again, but this time without the help of Angelique's book. Using her book will only cause a larger tear in the veil between the living and the dead, allowing who knows what to escape. A seance is the safest way to find Carolyn, and only Carolyn, Barnabas explained. We'll need a fourth person, Claudia instructed. I'll find Kimberly, Barnabas said. As Barnabas left to find Kimberly, who was in her laboratory, Claudia and Alex collected the mirror and headed down to the drawing room to prepare for the seance. Carolyn's life was at stake, and there was no time to spare. In a completely different part of the house, a much quieter scene, Caleb was helping Kate into a large canopy bed filled with pillows and comforters. The room was decorated to the highest of elegance, a room fit for a queen, and Kate certainly felt like one. I really don't need this kind of treatment, Caleb, but thank you, Kate said jokingly. I just want to make sure you're comfortable and take care of it. That's all, Caleb answered, tucking her in. I'd like to thank you, too. My room is very accommodating, Sebastian said as he hung up some of Kate's things in the adjacent closet. Of course, Caleb answered. So, Kate, why don't you get some rest and I'll show Sebastian around? Kate smiled as Sebastian and Caleb made their way out of the room and closed the door behind them. As they walked, Caleb took Sebastian to a large dining room that had a 24-person table in the center. The walls were covered in a soft maroon wallpaper depicting scenes of Collinsport shipyard and the ship that brought the Collins family from England to America 4 centuries ago. The 20th century chandelier given to the family by Elizabeth Collins, mother's father family, the Stoddards, sparkled and twinkled above them as a cook brought over specially made Maine clam chowder for the two to have for dinner. I hope you don't mind chowder, Caleb joked. No, it's fine, thanks. Listen, I really do want to thank you for having us here. It's very kind, Sebastian said. Listen, I love your sister. I would do anything for her. This is really no trouble at all, Caleb answered. How long have you lived here? Sebastian asked as he took a sip of his soup. Most of my life, really, after my parents divorced. My mother took off, and my dad and I lived here on our own for a bit, but then he took off too. I was here all by myself with a nanny for a while, then went off to a boarding school. I would spend Christmases and birthdays in England with Carolyn and her family. When we figured my father wasn't coming back, Carolyn and I decided to sell the house, but that's changed now. The family business is still doing well, so we're keeping it, Caleb explained. No word from your dad, ever? Sebastian asked, dipping bread into the chowder. I got a letter from him a few years ago, and oh, excuse me, Caleb said as his cell phone started ringing. Jesus, Sebastian, I'm so sorry. This is the office. I have to take it. Ever since I've been back on the board at the Collinsport Inc., it's been really crazy. Would you mind if I excused myself and took this call? No, please, by all means, Sebastian said as Caleb brushed off to answer his phone call in a different room. As soon as Caleb left the room, Sebastian wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin with the light blue embroidered seat and dropped it on the table. He was alone in the dining room. This was his moment to look around the column without being detected and find what he needed within the walls of the mansion for his boss. Sebastian sneaked through the hallway, a long winding corridor dotted with large portraits of family members, each portrait painted more severe than the next. He came to the one of Roger Collins, dated 1976, and across from him an unfinished painting of a teenage boy dated the same year. The boy stood in a courtyard within the confines of Collinwood, his face cold and sad. Sebastian's face took concern over the image. He believed he knew who was in the painting, David Collins. He made his way down the hall and down the back stairwell that led into the blue room. No one was inside. He looked around. The shelves were freshly dusted. Books were neatly organized. The furniture clean and perfect. Nothing out of the ordinary, it seemed. As Sebastian continued to look around the room, he noticed there was two large gargoyles on either side of the fireplace sitting. The right one had its own paw raised. The left one had its left paw raised. But one of the gargoyles' paw looked different. It had some sort of break in it, and the base were attached to the rest of the body. Sebastian walked over and placed his hand on the paw that instantly lowered and released a lock that pushed the large fireplace inward, revealing a secret passage within the walls. Sebastian looked around, still no one in the room, and carefully walked in the secret passage and followed it down the dark hallway. Back in the main drawing room, Alexander and Claudia had set up a round table with a large three-pronged candelabra in the center of the seance that dimmed the lights and waited for Barnabas and Kimberly. Do you think this will work? Alex asked a quiet Claudia. It has to. If we ever want to find your mother, get your mother back, it has to, Claudia replied as she lit the candles. Have you ever done this before? Alexander asked shyly. No, Claudia said, matter of fact, and in truth, a bit nervously. Ever since Leopold had trapped her in the cemetery, she'd used her powers to possess Alex. Sorry. Nothing felt the same. Her powers were weaker. She felt different. Even the confidence in her abilities waned. A mortal symptom. You don't think it'll work, do you? I can see it in your eyes, Alex said in a panicked tone. Alexandra, listen to me. Barnabas isn't going to just allow Carolyn to wander around the world of the dead without a fight. Regardless of what he is and what he's done, he actually cares about this family more than anyone wants to give him credit for. We just have to trust him, Claudia said aggressively. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't even know what I am anymore ever since Christopher and I broke up. I've been this whole other person. I don't know what's happening to me. I just want to get things back to normal, Alex confessed as she broke down on the sofa. Claudia couldn't help feel but feel responsible for Alex's pain. After all, Claudia was the main factor for Alex and Carolyn coming back to Collinwood after she changed Jack into Leopold, and then after she set fire to the mansion and possessed Alex and left her to deal with mis- the residual powers inside of her. It was all Claudia's fault, but she couldn't change anything anymore. As all she could do was offer her help. Are we ready? Barnabas said as he walked in with Kimberly, who herself looked white as a ghost. We are, Claudia said, picking Alex up by the hand and walking over to the seance table. Barnabas, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is lunacy. A seance, Kimberly said as she nervously poured herself a glass of water. It's the only way we'll be able to reach Carolyn on the other side, and if we don't, she may never return to the life of the living, he explained. This is insane, Kimberly said in a loud whisper as Barnabas took her by the hand and sat her down at the table. Claudia dimmed the lights further and propped the mirror to Carolyn that Carolyn disappeared into. Up against the sofa facing the seance table. Hold hands, never break the circle. Our hands create, Claudia instructed. Close your eyes, she continued in the wilds of the beyond. We call out to those that have gone. Send us ours. Who was wronged? Send us Carolyn Collins' daughter Thorne, Claudia called. Nothing happened. Carolyn, we ask you to listen for Claudia's voice and try to make your way home. Carolyn, can you hear us? Can you hear Claudia? Call out to us, Barnabas said as Kimberly opened one eye to look around. And just as Barnabas' sentence ended, the mirror began to shake. It moved twice, then stopped. It's her. Try again, Claudia, Barnabas asked. From out in another space, another time, another world, come from Carolyn to this time, this place, this realm. Find my voice and listen. Well, come back to home, away from hell. The lights in the room flickered on and off. The table began to shake, then lifted, then dropped to the ground. The mirror began to shake again. and glass began to morph into liquid, and inside they could see deep down below was Carolyn screaming, her call echoing throughout the room. It's her, Mother, Carol. It's her, Mother, come back. Follow my voice, Alexander said as the portal from the mirror began a wind all around the room. Alexander, don't get close. She has to do this herself, or you'll risk falling in too, Claudia said, holding on to Alex's hand. And Alex tried to into the mirror. On the other side of the wall, though a hollowed out portion of the room, Sebastian stood peeking through the eyes of a painting that looked directly into the room where the seance was taking place. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was witnessing firsthand the living contacting the dead on the other side through a mirror, just a regular mirror. To Sebastian, it was extraordinary and would be further good news to report back to his boss. Carolyn, you must try and come back. Reach through, Claudia yelled, trying to make her voice reach Carolyn as best as she could over the loud sounds coming from the mirror. The wind from the portal grew stronger and stronger, and things from inside the room began to swirl in the air and fly into the mirror, and Carolyn still stood there screaming, trying to escape, but to no avail. Barnabas, do something, Kimberly said, now terrified and in disbelief at what she was seeing. Barnabas let go of Alex and Kim and had placed them together as to not break the circle. He carefully walked over to the mirror that was spewing energy matter all around in colors of green and blue. He stood up, strong and stern against the mighty winds coming from the portal, and put his cane into the mirror, pushing it further and further and hoping Carolyn would use the end of the to find her way out. Barnabas's hand was now almost entering the mirror itself. Carolyn was just inches from the edge of the other side and almost grabbed on, but suddenly a hand reached on from the inside of the mirror and grabbed Barnabas's wrist and began to pull him in. He struggled and struggled, his arms now and halfway into the mirror. Barnabas, Kimberly screamed. Don't break the circle, Barnabas screamed as he continued to struggle against the hand. The energy matter from inside the mirror soon turned from only just colors to Angelique's face. It was she who was pulling Barnabas into the mirror, laughing in his face as she was finally going to get her revenge on her former lover. This is the end, Barnabas Collins, for all your evil deeds, for taking my daughter away, taking her away from her life with me, for destroying our love and killing me. You'll finally pay. Angelique kissed, then put another hand on his wrist, gathering more strength to pull him in. As she continued to pull Barnabas in, Claudia knew there was only a matter of time before he fell in, and once Barnabas was in, he would never return, for he was the undead. She made a choice. She closed her eyes and whispered a soft chant to herself, one she knew would work, and mustered all the power she had left in this one last spell. From this place I lead you out. From this time I have no doubt. Away with you. You'll be free. This is the way it has to be. It was a spell that no witch ever wants to use. It is a spell against another witch to banish them forever by using it. Claudia would be able to use her powers one last time before fitting them forever, for she used her powers against a sister witch, her own mother. All the powers would be gone forever. Soon Angelique began to fade, and her strength over Barnabas's wrist weakened. She knew had been done. What had been done. Claudia had betrayed her and used her powers over a witch. As she began to dissipate within the glass, she looked out into Claudia's tear-stained face. It was the last time they'd see each other. Evangeline, why? Angelique said, her voice echoing away in silence. With Angelique slowly going away, Carolyn was able to grasp onto Barnabas. He saw her terrified face and pulled her, his arm now coming back out of the mirror at his wrist. then his wrist, then Carolyn's head and shoulders, then finally a large bright explosion that locked the portal and knocked everyone to the ground. Alexandra crawled over to her exhausted mother and crawled up next to her, crying profusely. Alex, come on, let's take her up to her room. Come, Kimberly said, grabbing onto mother and daughter. As Barnabas and Claudia both got up and dusted themselves off and walked over to his daughter and hugged her. You saved me once again, he said softly. Claudia couldn't believe she did it too, knowing that she no longer had powers and that she would never see her mother again. But it had to be done. Claudia smiled and hugged Barnabas back. Sebastian ran back through the corridor after watching what was the most amazing, exhilarating event that he had ever seen. He closed the hidden passage in the blue room where he first found the secret door and dialed his boss on the phone. Hey, it's me again. You're not going to believe that what I just saw. Everything you told me about this place is true. Everything. We're in, Sebastian said excitedly. In the library, Christopher sat alone, still looking through books, completely unaware of what had just happened downstairs in the main drawing room when Caleb walked in. Oh, hey, did Sebastian come in here? Caleb asked, looking for his dinner guest who had disappeared. Who? Chris asked. Kate's brother, Sebastian. They're staying with us for a bit. He didn't come in. I had to leave during dinner, and when I came back, he was gone. Weird. Anyway, what are you doing in here with all these books? Caleb asked. Research, I guess. Listen, when's the next full moon? Chris asked awkwardly. I have no idea. There's gotta be an almanac in here somewhere, right? Oh, here, Caleb said, cracking open the almanac. Does it say? Chris asked apprehensively, knowing that the next full moon was the date of Leopold's demise. Caleb looked up from the passage he was reading, knowing what he knew about his brother Christopher and what happened on the full moons. He took a gulp of air and said, tomorrow night. Okay, guys, it's the read along for the Revisitor. It's still sort of like weird that Christopher's gone a little bit, but I don't like Andrew because he's Christopher. I like Andrew because Andrew's Andrew. I know there's a part of Christopher there, but for all intents and purposes, I don't feel like there was a lot of and if you were listening, there's a lot of confliction with Chris. There isn't. The only confliction really with Andrew is his dad, and his dad's dead, right? But Chris was really conflicting, and he was easy to feel sorry for, and he still is. I don't hate him for cheating on Alexander, and some people might say, well, why not? He's a two-time son of a bitch. Does he got a wedding ring finger on? No, goddammit. But so I don't, I don't hate him for necessarily cheating on Alexander. He doesn't, you know, Chris is really worried about getting a cure for he doesn't want to hurt nobody. And that's the thing. He just doesn't. He doesn't necessarily want to hurt somebody. But I really enjoy the scene setting in these. These are just so good. Who is my favorite character from the beginning of this? from a heel standpoint, even though he didn't start off as a heel, I like how Caleb became the heel. Not Caleb, Leopold became the heel. Caleb is a really interesting character throughout this. He's, very nice. He's not a dick. He's not. He's just in love with Kate. But he's, even though he's a colonist, he's still like, holy shit, you just shot magic out of your hand, like with Alexander. Caleb's one of those. When I read him and I get a feel for him, every time I'm thinking, this guy reminds me of somebody that would be from Mayberry that just is related to the Collins family. Oh shit. But yeah, that's my read along and review. Um, I enjoy the hell out of these. So obviously we see Angelique way, 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 way later, but Claudia did a lot. I wonder. I do have a question for John when I bring him on. But which I'm excited. I can't wait to bring him on because I do have questions, not just about the Onyx curse, but about other characters too. So, link's gonna be in the description box. Like, share, comment, subscribe.